Have a practice.
Hi. Right. Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north, and today we'll be talking about Phlebodium Aureum.
Do it again.
Right.
Oh, hang on, this is from the top.
From the top. Ma.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north, and today we'll be talking about Phlebodium Aureum.
Okay, I think the term is it's a wrap.
It's a wrap! Wait, what is it where they go?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. So today we're going to talk about the Blue Star Fern, otherwise known as Phlebodium Aureum, and you can just see it there. Trying to do this back to front. There. It's the crinkly one. And we're going to try and answer some questions on it. Specifically, how do you care for it? How do you propagate it? When do you propagate it? How do you look after it? What do you do to make sure it thrives? And basically we are going to do a repot of this fern, and I'm going to try and divide the rhizome and see if I can make a few more to dot around the greenhouse and maybe to give away as gifts. So let's jump in. So this one over here is Phlebodium Aureum Davana. Now this is the crinkly one. I refer to this as the crinkly one. Now if you're used to seeing phlebodiums, you might be thinking that doesn't really look like a typical phlebodium, and you'd be right. So let's just point this one out. This one is a self-seeded phlebodium that I found growing in an orchid pot, and this one down here is a purchased Phlebodium Aureum, and on the label they call it Phlebodium Aureum Blue Star. But they're all Phlebodium Aureums and they're all Blue Star Ferns. This particular one, this is Phlebodium Aureum Davana. And all of these cultivated Phlebodiums come from the tropical regions of North and South America. And what you find is they all come from the family Polypodiaceae, which is a fern family. And within that family there are about 60 genera, of which Phlebodium Aureum is one of those genera. It then splits into about 4 different species, and those species are then crossed and hybridized, and that's what you get. There isn't a great deal of difference between all the Phlebodium Aureums that I've seen, but Davana is perhaps the one which is more different than all the others. Most of the ones that I've seen tend to look like this one down here. So what we'll do is we'll get it off the shelf there, we'll get it over to the bench, and let's have a look at repotting, talk about some more of its care needs, and we'll also do a division as well. So we're looking at my Phlebodium Aureum Davana here, and it's not looking its best at the moment. It's quite yellowy, and I think maybe this is because we've just gone through, well, when I say just gone through, we've had about 4 or 5 weeks of rain since, but prior to that we had at least 6 weeks of really hot weather, and they don't like it too hot. Even though they come from subtropical regions, they don't like that sun. Another reason could be that I'm actually overwatering it a little bit, and I think that's possibly the reason, because I'm looking at my other Phlebodium I've got up there, the self-seeded one, and that's yellowing as well. It's surprising that you can actually overwater these things. Just want to point this out before I go any further. I've just noticed this here. You can see the new leaves here, new fronds, and look how blue they are. And what I'm going to try and do here is cut off some of this rhizome and propagate it. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just have a little chat about its care needs, and then we'll unpot it, and we will see if we can divide it up and talk about how we should go about repotting it and dividing it. Yeah, I've already said these are native to the tropical regions in North and South America. They are all epiphytic. All of them are epiphytic, and they don't want soil to grow in. Having said that, you will find them in garden centres potted up in media. They may not necessarily do their absolute best, because these can grow, believe it or not, up to 1 metre tall. I've seen specimens where they are 1 metre tall. Mine are only about a year old, and they are being constricted by these terracotta pots. and I think some of these are actually potted up in media as well, but we're going to change that and see what happens. Something to mention is the number of lobes. Now these you can see, actually you can see how these are similar to the one I showed you a minute ago, the kind of traditional Blue Star Fern, where they have these lobes on. Because these are twisted and crinkled, you can't quite tell the same, but you can see that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lobes on it. That one just has 3 on it. This one has 2, 4, 6, 7. It's not as easy to spot on this Davana, but you can definitely see on the other ones, because somebody asked me this question in the comments on one of my videos, saying that they wanted one with so many lobes on it. But what you find is, depending on the age of the leaf, they will have different numbers of lobes on the leaf. Some of the younger ones will only have like 3 lobes, and the older ones will get many more. These fronds in the wild, and if it's grown particularly well, can get up to 50 centimetres long. So it can definitely go a lot bigger than what you can see here. Now, whether this particular hybrid will get so big, I don't know, but I know that the traditional species of the plant can get quite big. So temperatures, they do best in temperatures above 10 degrees Celsius up to a maximum of about 27 degrees Celsius. Now I had it up to 38 degrees Celsius a few weeks ago, so that might be a reason why it's yellowing a little bit, struggling a little bit. They like bright light, they don't like direct sunlight like many of these epiphytic plants. As it's a fern, it's a good idea to keep it relatively moist, but I did read some information saying that they didn't really mind drying out that much. I'm thinking of it more along the lines of orchids than ferns, in a sense, because you don't hear of many ferns that actually don't mind drying out, but this is one that doesn't, and I can attest to that because I have actually left them to dry out quite a bit, and found that they seem to grow even more when you leave them to dry out. That doesn't mean that you don't water them. The official recommendation is to keep them moist but not soggy. They don't want to be sitting in water, and I saw various sources that said if you find that it stops growing or it's yellowing or browning leaves, hold off the water for a bit and see if that helps. Pests, they can get scale insect on them, and again, not really a pest, but if you do overwater them, they can get various diseases, so try and hold back a little bit on that. Don't overfeed. They're not that keen on being fertilised. They are usually happy to just get whatever they get in passing. So if they're growing up in a tree, any kind of detritus that builds up around there, they're happy with that, and whatever comes down the tree. So I give them rainwater. The rainwater I give them comes off a roof, so it does have some nutrients in it. I don't give them anything else. There's no other fertiliser, and I don't really see the need to do that. It's more easy to overfeed it than it is to underfeed it. And it's definitely more preferential to underfeed it than overfeed it. So, to answer some of those questions, when do you repot it? Well, you can repot these things whenever you like. They prefer it in spring, obviously before the main growth happens. But if you find that the pot is getting overcrowded with these creeping rhizomes, then that would be a good time to repot it. Like many plants, they're not really keen on being repotted. I could possibly leave this quite a bit longer yet, but I want to have a go. I want to have a go and see what it's like by splitting this rhizome. And the rhizome, I really like the look of the rhizome. I've got another Phlebodium up there where it's in a plastic pot and it's burst the pot through the creeping rhizome. So my plan is to get some of this rhizome with one of the leaf fronds on it and to pot that up separately and see what happens. I think it's going to work. So I'll show you that in a few minutes. And we're back. So a few minutes for me and milliseconds for you. That's the magic of video. So let's have a look. Now what I've got here, you can just about see it there. So we've got a larger pot, and I've put some crocks in the bottom, and we've got some pure bark. There is some various bits of vermiculite and perlite mixed in at the bottom there, but I've not put that in there purposely. That was just in the pot anyway, in the bag, sorry. And the idea is it's got to be something that is free draining and airy, and for my conditions here where it rains pretty much all of the time apart from we had a quite a hot spell in March and April time, but that is unusual. For the most part the humidity is very high, and these rhizomes here, you can see all these little hairs on them. This is what they're well known for. This is why they've got one of the names is golden polypody. These hairs on the rhizomes must not be buried. These are really important for taking in the moisture for the plant, and I've heard of people having these completely out of media, just like orchids really, no media at all. We only pot them up really just so that we've got somewhere for them to go. They would be quite happy just pretty much sitting anywhere, a bit like an earth plant if you could keep that humidity high. So I'm going to have a look at this, and I'm actually going to remove some of the media. So let's just take the label out. So there it is, Phlebodium Aureum Davana. I cannot remember whether I've repotted this. I've not written it on. I can't imagine that when I bought it, it was in a terracotta pot, because nothing ever is these days. But it shouldn't be too tricky to get out, because there you go. These things are very tough. Hard to kill, I understand. A very strange thing. I mean, this is a really spongy kind of media, and you can see these huge rhizomes. They're like fingers and they're tough as anything. Very, very hard. So I can see a crock at the bottom here. You get these are like the little fibrous roots that come off the main rhizomes, but these are replaceable. It's the rhizomes that are important. So what I want to do here is take that off. There we go. I don't think there's much in the way of media there, if I'm honest. There's a little bit. I think I'm guessing that I potted this up when I first bought it. Back in the days when, well, say back in the day, it was only last year, but it was at the time I didn't have time to research and look, and I think I just potted it up in general purpose, and it'll do okay in that, don't get me wrong, it'll do okay. I've seen them in all sorts, in coir, in coconut, what's that coconut stuff, coconut husk, is it coconut husk? I've seen them in bark, just sitting there in nothing whatsoever. I'm certainly not going to take all this off. So the question is, which bit do we take? I want to try and cut some of this rhizome. Well, there's a nice leaf there. If I could cut some of that off. There's a section there, but it's kind of, it doesn't look that young a leaf. I would like a young leaf really. It makes sense that this bit that's kind of sticking out here. So I think, I wonder if I can get those at the side there. I've got a penknife here. I don't know if this is going to work. I have sterilised the penknife, honestly, and I'm going to try and cut. That looks naturally there. That's a cut there, isn't it? Let's see what this is like. And these are quite brittle, by the way. So I'm expecting, especially some of these brown ones. Can you see that? That will really easily snap off, but it's okay. It'll survive, he says. So let's have a go. Oh, I just heard one snap there. Let's see if I can get that. Can you see that there? And if I can get some root with it too, all the better. There we go. So we've got some rhizome, and we've got 2 new leaves, and that looks like a new frond as well. That's all I want. I'm only going to try it with one plant. I don't want to destroy the whole thing. So I'll put that to one side. This bit, it looks like I've cut through a rhizome there. I'll just chop that bit off just to neaten it up a bit. Right, so that is going to go, and there's the one that I snapped off. That is going to go into this pot, and all I'm going to do with it is surround it with bark, nothing else. There's no need for it to go in loads of soggy compost. So, just to get a feel, and it's got to go on top, so it's got to sit so that those rhizomes are above the soil. Now, well, it's bark, isn't it? That kind of started off on top and then started creeping down. There's no point lifting it up now. It'll have to live the rest of its life underneath. But hopefully it's going to have more room soon once I get it potted up. And I really want to get rid of this bits of soil around the edge. Bits of media. I don't really want that. Like I say, these are very similar to orchids in that they're used to growing in crooks and crannies on trees, and the only media they've got is what they find up there, which is usually going to be like a mossy kind of a media. Should you put them in sphagnum moss is a good question. Well, it depends on your environment. Again, it's very similar to orchids. My environment is very moist anyway and quite cool, so I'm inclined to try it without first. If I find it's drying out a lot, then I will have a rethink. I'm really just trying to get rid of the media here, and in doing so I'm getting rid of some of these fibrous roots, but it's fine. Rhizomes are okay. So let's get that in. Right. Nice airy bark. Really a good thing to pot these in would be anything that you've got that is like a pan shaped, something that's not necessarily deep. I don't know if you can see that, I can't see it myself. Not necessarily deep. Now see, I've got that quite high there, that's what I want. But something that is shallow but wide. I think that will be quite a good pot to go for. Unfortunately, that kind of thing is easier talked about than found. Whenever I've seen anybody with those kind of things, they tend to be like homemade. You know, like they've kind of repurposed a frying pan, something like that. Now, I like this one, and I would really like more of it, and this is one of the reasons why I am trying it in a bigger pot to give it some more room, because out of the 3 Phlebodiums that I've got, one thing that they're all doing really well is spreading that rhizome, and the bigger space you can give it to spread that rhizome into, the more likely it is to give you a bigger plant. So let's give it a, now that's certainly an airy mix now, isn't it? It's simply in bark, it's got plenty of drainage there, and I think that should do. I'm going to give it one water, and then I'm going to leave it and keep my eye on it and see if we're getting that bark to, well, it should dry out, shouldn't it, because it's bark. There's no reason why not. I think the best thing for me to do is just keep an eye on the top, keep an eye on the label to test whether that's wet, and see whether these kind of yellowing shoots, yellowing fronds start to improve a little bit. I think I've been overwatering this, to be honest. So my next job, just move that to one side, is to pot up this rhizome, and I just happen to have a pot, so why not use the same thing? But this time I'm not going to be putting any media in there other than the bark, and that's going to sit on the top like that. So let's get a little bit more bark. More, and that can sit like that. Always better going for the younger shoots, because much like people, the young have this remarkable ability to heal up quicker, and they are very difficult to kill. Not that I've tried killing anybody. Okay, so the only job I've got left to do is to put labels on them both, put a date on them both, and we're ready to go. Now if this works, which I don't see any reason why it won't do, then I will have a go at some of my other ones, a couple of my other ones, and I'll be able to spread them around. So I've got one last thing to show you before I go. Okay, so I think we've covered all its care needs and a little bit about it, and we've covered the propagation and the division of the rhizome, but I just wanted to show you this because there's other ways of propagating it. So this was a self-seeded one, and you can see these on the underside here. These are the spore structures. So each one of these, which are in nice neat rows there, you'd think somebody designed that, wouldn't you? That's a bit like me with my OCD. So each one of these, you can easily flick them off, and there you go. And inside each one of those there will be lots and lots of spores, hundreds, maybe thousands of spores, and it would definitely be worth trying it just in a little bit of vermiculite. I'm not going to do that because I think I've got enough of these. I think one of these, I mean, it's not the nicest looking Phlebodium, and this brown stuff here shows you this is definitely getting too much sun, not enough humidity. Might be something to do with the fact that it's bursting through its pot there. It's just one to keep an eye on anyway. Certainly the weather's been that bad recently, it might give it a chance to recover. So yeah, it would be worth trying that as a propagation technique. I'd stick it in a tiny little tray of vermiculite and put a few of those spores in and see what happens. Pretty much every orchid I get these days seems to have one of these growing in it, so I don't think it would be too difficult to do. So that's another method to propagate Phlebodium. But of course we all tend to want the nicer ones, the Blue Star ones. This particular one, so far anyway, hasn't had any spores on it, and I don't know whether it will develop them at some point. My fern knowledge is limited. I don't know whether they are split into male and female. I do know, like this one for example, it only has the spores on certain fronds, it doesn't have them on them all. So whether this one will get spores on it or not remains to be seen, but if it does, it might be worth giving it a go and trying to propagate it. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I've got a couple more videos on ferns. I'll stick a card up now, or I'll put it on the end screen, and if you're interested in a little bit more of a deep dive into Phlebodium, have a look at my Phlebodium Aureum care video, and for now I will see you on the next one. Bye.